Pilot Boys in the building. Welcome to the Pilot Boys podcast, where you'll get the real on all things sports, music, and pop culture. I'm Mecca here with my co-host B.
Feeling like a kid in a candy store today.
Woo! Today is April 23rd, 2020. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. We are quarantined still in social distancing due to this coronavirus pandemic, but we're still trying to figure out ways to bring you the best content at all costs. And V, I am excited about today's show. I mean, wow. On today's show, we will talk to, drum roll please, Eric Metcalf, three-time Pro Bowler, three-time All-Pro, Browns hero, NFL hero. Eric Metcalf will join us on the show to talk about the Browns, talk about his career, how he got to where he got, what his feelings are about the Hall of Fame, the new jerseys, and so much more. In a very, very thorough interview. You guys don't want to miss that. Thank you guys for listening. Shout out to our Patreon subscribers, man. Remember now that our Patreon subscribers will get our episodes on Wednesdays a night early. These donations help keep our show going. If you want to help keep us on air, you can donate at www.patreon.com/Pilot Boys Podcast. Don't forget, grab some wristbands at shop.pilotboys.com. Let's go.
Where the Pilot Boys at? Pilot Boys, we get on up. We don't fly, boys, we getting up. So high. Pilot Boys, we get on up. We don't fly, boys. And if anybody stepping away, it goes down. I'm down, rock for my Browns. And if anybody stepping away, it goes down. Time of the dope, ready to roll.
You're listening to the Pilot Boys Podcast. Our next guest is a three-time Pro Bowler and three-time All-Pro in the NFL. Not only is he a Browns hero, but he's an NFL hero as well. Please make some noise for Eric Metcalf.
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. So, yeah, we're going to jump right into it, man. We, obviously we're huge Browns fans. We're huge NFL fans and football fans. I was a walk-on at Ohio State. We have just a tremendous respect for who you are and what you've done as a player and also as Browns fans, the moments that you brought to us. One of the things that was really interesting about your story, obviously, is, having a father, Terry Metcalf, who was an NFL player. And, I just kind of wanted to get a little bit of insight from you on what was that like kind of growing up with an NFL dad and whether or not there was any pressure that was created on you to try to kind of follow in his footsteps.
Well, that he is what fueled my fire because from the time I knew I was going to play football, which was at 7 years old, I wanted to be like my dad. And it's a rare case because my mother and father, they had me when they were in high school. So, so they were young. So when my dad was in college and early into the pros, I could watch him play.
Right.
And actually know what's going on,
Right.
And so that is what fueled me to want to play football. And I wanted to be like him and be the best I could. I mean, any pressure that it would have been, it was never from other people because I know a lot of people wanted to see me play just because my dad had played and they wanted to see if I would be like him. But
right.
but all the pressure that I thought I felt was what I applied on myself just because I wanted to be as good as him, if not better. And so
absolutely
with everything that I did, he was my focus. Be as good as him or better, and go from there. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And if you ask me, I think it did.
I would say so.
We think so too. Well, talk to us a little bit about some of those experiences too when you were younger. What are some of the memories that you have from kind of growing up? Like you said, you were, a lot of the father-son stories you hear about. It's like the dad played before the kid was really could really watch. And then by the time he grew up, that was kind of a memory on YouTube, right? But in your situation, you actually got to go to games and you got to see this. What were some of the memories that you had from growing up and kind of being around the league?
Well, I thought my dad was the absolute man. I thought he was the biggest thing in football. I mean, back then you're thinking early 70s and all that. And I remember one point, my dad, I think he made like $100,000 a year, and I thought we were like the richest people in the world.
Right.
I mean, but it was just fun to be like. I remember, going to class and having show and tell, and everybody would bring toys in and bring games in, and I'd bring my dad in.
You had everybody wanted to be your friend after that, I bet.
Right. And I'd bring my dad in, and then he would bring like highlight films of his previous season like that and show, so they get double for what I brought in. Then, I know when he went up to Canada, one of my favorite memories when he went and played for, we left the Cardinals and went and played for Toronto Argonauts. And I would go up there because I actually lived in Seattle here with my mom when he was up there at the time. And and so I would go up there in the summer. They start Canadian football early. Mm-hmm. And so I'd be there in the summer, and I'd go to practice in their facility. I had my own locker. I had my own my own uniform, jersey, shoulder pads, helmet, practice with my name on it, everything. And I went to practice with them and did all the drills in the beginning of practice. And once they went on to team and such, I dropped off. But I got to do those kind of things. And I mean, a lot of kids, even who have fathers that play football, don't get that opportunity because they're not letting that happen, right? But back then, I got that opportunity, and it was a lot of fun. I knew I wanted to be a football player.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, okay, you had your father, who was obviously your inspiration, but then you started to probably become a star in your own right once you started playing high school football. You take us into a little bit of your high school career and then your recruitment. How did you end up at Texas?
Well, actually, in my mind, I was a star when I first started playing.
We all were, right? We all were, right? Yeah.
I mean, but I can say that I scored like 10 touchdowns one game when I was 7 years old, and they caught 3 back. So I guess I was, and they put me on TV.
Wow.
but high school it was different for me because I don't know if you know that I'm younger than my class. So I graduated high school in '85, but I should have graduated in '86. When I went to high school, I was 13 years old. Mm. And so, and to go forward, when I went to college, I was 17, and I played my entire first season at 17, and then turned 18 in January.
Wow.
And so, I think high school was different for me because I was here in Seattle when I first started high school, and I went to an all-boys school that didn't allow freshmen to play varsity football. Mm-hmm. But in my mind, I thought, I can talk to them, I can convince them. They'll see me play, and I can convince them to let me play on this team. Mm-hmm. And it didn't happen. They only let me play freshman football, which we only had 5 games, and those 5 games were against 3 teams, which really upset me because I was only 13. I could have still played Little League with all my friends and played 11 games and had lots of fun and won another championship. So I'm telling you this because of that, I transferred and I went to Virginia with my dad when he was finishing with the Redskins. I told that school, if you don't let me play varsity as a freshman, I will not be here next year.
Wow.
And so I went to Virginia. And so I finished my last 3 years of high school in Virginia. And that's because I wanted to play football in the South. And so I figured if I was over there somewhere, I could go play football in the South if I do what I'm supposed to do. And so, I did fairly well in high school. And then I had and then the colleges started coming. So I took a visit to Notre Dame, Nebraska, Georgia, Miami, and Texas. And those are schools I visited, and I was a big track guy also, so that played important part of where I wanted to go to school. So my mom and dad always wanted me to go to Notre Dame, so I went to Catholic school my entire life. Um, but I did actually commit to the University of Miami, and I did that within 2 hours of my visit.
You know how Miami was back then, so
Yeah, in the 80s. Oh
So
boy.
so you can imagine somebody who's just 17 years old on the visit in Miami. I'm like, this is it. I'm
Right.
coming here, and and,
Right.
and and their track team wasn't very good, so I was willing to play some get track. I want to be
Right.
in Miami, and so after I committed to Miami, and all the schools stopped calling me. Of course, my parents did not. They were not having it. They did not want me to go to Miami. So, but I was still trying to convince them until the bitter end that that was the school for me. And so I didn't actually tell Miami that I wasn't coming there until signing day.
Mm.
And so at that point, I told them I wasn't coming there. My parents were like, "How about Notre Dame?" I said, "But I'm not going to Notre Dame." And I kind of opened up recruiting again. And then Texas came back, and I was like, I liked it when I was down there. Good weather. I'll be able to have fun and success in track as well. I'm going to Texas, and so that's how that played out. And now I say, if even though we didn't win a lot of games when I was there, if I had to do it over again, I'd go to Texas again.
so I wanted to ask about your recruitment itself. Like you gave us some depth into that. But if you look at recruiting today with the hoopla that's around it, signing day announcements, people being on the radars in eighth grade, was it that way back then? Still, how were you found, and when did you start generating hype, and how heavy was your recruitment?
I almost feel like my recruitment was only generated because of track. I don't. When I first, especially when I was first got to Virginia, I was only a sophomore. And once again, like I'm I'm 14 years old, right? And so I
Yeah.
don't really think people are thinking about me. But and so my sophomore year up there, I broke my thumb, so I only played maybe 3 or 4 games that year. And so people didn't really know me as a football player, but a lot of people knew me as a track guy, especially in the long jump. And so I would go to track meets. There'd be colleges there. They'd see me. They'd talk to you. Then you could talk whenever you wanted. It wasn't a big thing.
Right.
And so I think a lot of track coaches who saw me at meets kind of influenced uh, football programs to look at me because they wanted me. The track teams wanted me, and they figured I was a football player, so these guys, the football programs, should start looking at me. And in my junior year, I had a really good year. My team was really good, so a lot of teams started, a lot of colleges started coming to look at me, and a lot of times it's because they were looking at the other teams as well. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so they would come and see guys who were ranked higher than us, or teams that were ranked higher than us, and we were beating them, and I was leading the show. So I think that kind of led to it also. So you know, it really track. I think is really the driving force behind it because Texas never sent me a letter ever,
Oh wow.
but their track guy, track coach who ended up becoming the football recruiting coordinator saw me at a meet, and we set up and we were talking about uh, the meet, and he was asking me my event, and I said the long jump, and he said, "How are you going to do it?" I said, "I'm going to win."
Right.
He always talks about that to this day. I said, "I'm going to win. I guarantee I'm going to win." And then so I won, came back, and we started talking. He was like, "What's your name?" I told him. He said, "Your dad?" He asked me about my dad, and so that's when he goes back and tells the football coaches, you should recruit this guy, more so because he wanted me as a track guy. And so
Mm.
once again, track was the driving force, I think, behind my recruitment.
So speaking of that too, when you talk about track, obviously you are a two-time NCAA long jump champion and a football star at Texas, right? So balancing both of those things. And I remember even when I was playing in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was much more common to see kind of the two sport athletes, well, mostly the football and the track guys. I don't feel like you see it as much now as you used to see it back then. Do you feel that same way? And if you do, why do you think that is? Because is it coaches being more selfish, or is it something else?
And also, how did track help? How do you feel like running track helped you as a football player too, as an addition
Okay.
to?
So I feel like, not I feel like, I know it's exactly like that, that coaches don't really allow football players to run track as much as they used to, unless they're just absolute superstars on the track. And
Mm-hmm.
and I know it's more of a control thing. We want you to be with our guys and want to make sure you're doing everything that everybody else is doing to have you ready for spring ball and in the fall and everything like that. And so I think it's a problem.
Yeah.
I really think it's a problem because, I mean, when you really think about it, when a guy's college football career is over and he wants to go to the combine or they're having pro day, what is the first thing everybody mentions? The 40.
The 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the 40. I got to get my 40 faster. Well, if you ran track, you probably could have, because these are
Yeah.
the fastest guys in the world, and they know how to get fast.
Right.
And these coaches know how to make people fast. So I would think that a college coach, football coach, would want my guy who's fast to go out there and compete in this sport. We're getting faster because now our team becomes faster. But it's a control thing, having guys around and all that. And so it's not as prevalent as it was back then. And I think just me doing track, and I wasn't as much as a sprinter once I got to college. It was a long jump. A long jump was my thing. So, but it was an event that I worked on every day, and you still had to be fast because you have to run down the runway.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it helped me in football in that it taught me a lot of body control. You have to run down a runway almost full speed at that board, get yourself ready to jump and be in position to carry your body 27 feet.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's really hard if you don't know what you're doing. And you have to constantly work on that. And that's the body control that I think helped me in football, because when I go on the football field now, I'm able to run around, run as fast as I can, make a cut, kind of
Mm-hmm.
slow down, but then get back to full speed almost immediately and things like that, because these are things that I've worked on in track.
Right.
And then during my time at Texas, my first year I did track with no problem. The coach was cool, but then we had my first and second year, I'm sorry. Then going into my junior year, we had a change of coaches, and they wanted me to do spring ball. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I run track. And so, they told me, if you don't go to spring ball, then you're not going to start in the fall. I said, well, that's a chance that I'll have to take.
Mm.
And I know, and I tell you that because I think there are a lot of guys who could actually do that, right?
Yeah.
But they choose not to, and they don't want to listen to the mouths of the coaches because they feel like they're in control more so now than guys like me did and you did back in the past.
Right.
Right.
And the interesting thing, you talked about Texas, obviously Texas football. One other question we had about that before we move into more of some of the pro stuff is, looking at the program now, right? You said that if you could do it all over again, you would have gone to Texas. So I imagine that you're still kind of in tune with the program. What do you see in the program now in the hands of Tom Herman and the direction they're moving? Are you optimistic or pessimistic? How do you feel about the program as it is now?
I feel like we're headed in the right direction. I mean, I know now, even before Coach Herman got there with Coach Strong, that we were starting to get all the Texas kids to stay in Texas again.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't losing them to Oklahoma and A&M, and A&M's in Texas, SEC. So technically leaving Texas, right? And so I think Coach Strong started, and now Coach Herman has kept it rolling, and we're continuing to have top 10 recruiting classes, which is great.
Right.
But we need those top 10 recruiting classes to show up on Saturdays, and that whether it be those guys making plays or the way they're being coached. Because although we have these great these great recruiting classes, we're winning 8 games.
Right.
Yeah.
8 games doesn't get you anything.
No.
You know? That in some cases that only gets you 3rd or maybe even 4th in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're playing a bowl game.
So what is missing then? Because you guys obviously have talent, right? And you have, I mean, Tom Herman at least was a capable offensive coordinator at Ohio State. We obviously know him very well. What do you think is missing? What is missing? What's the difference between you guys winning 8 games and let's say 11 games right now as it is?
I think it's just been. I think over the course of the last few years, especially since Coach Herman's been there, they've been in games. They've beaten Oklahoma. They've won Sugar Bowl. They've won big games. Beat SC. But we're not winning the games that we're supposed to win. We're struggling. Even though we're winning, we're beating Kansas. We're barely beating them. We lose to Iowa State after we just beat Oklahoma the week before, Oklahoma State or TCU. And I think we're not, because they've been so young, I think that they're not mature enough to handle the success. You know what I mean? It's just when they're not winning games and then like toss that away because it's over. Let's move on because we gotta get ready for this game. And it's very easy to say that you are doing that. But when you're in college, you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, you got everybody telling you you're great and everything.
Yeah, and social media now too.
And the parties after wins are long, right? So.
Right. Are you really preparing like you should be? Did you really toss that win that you just had away and prepare for the next week? And I think that's the point. That's the hump that we got to get over, because we're winning big game. We're beating Oklahoma. We're doing that, and that's what we have to pretty much beat to win the conference. We're doing that, but then, like I said, we're losing games right after that we should not lose, and that's keeping us from being in the playoffs, which we haven't done yet.
Right, right. So let's transition a little bit to your pro career. I mean, obviously, like I told you at the beginning, we're huge Browns fans. That's kind of how we met, kind of on social media, right? It's kind of through the Browns Nation, right? And, you know, when you were drafted, you're drafted in 1989, 13th overall. And I think they actually showed that draft the other day.
Yesterday.
Talk to us a little bit. Yesterday. Yeah, I saw you tweeting about it. Talk to us a little bit about what that was like. First of all, like the preparation for the draft and, you know, what you felt like, where did you think you were going to go? And then also when you were finally drafted by the Browns, what did that feel like? And what were your impressions of the Browns?
Okay, so I going into it, I really wanted to go to the Rams. I wanted to go to LA and be in LA. I had a friend who played, and Jerry Gray, who played for the Rams at the time, and I trained with him when he came back to Austin all season. He wore number 2 at Texas before me, and so that's where I really wanted to go, because I thought that would be the place for me. But I thought that I was going to go to the Jets. I guess everybody thought that.
What pick did they have?
14.
Oh, okay.
and so I think the Browns were at 20 prior to the draft, and that's what makes it even crazy. And I tweeted about it yesterday, is that Michael Barty came to visit me like 4 days before the draft, and he came to me and he asked me to do a agility test, and I would not do it. He said he was like, I flew all the way down. They were talking about drafting. I need you to do this test so I can go back. And I said, I'm not doing it. I had actually just finished playing basketball. He said the test didn't really matter. He just needed to, because I didn't do it at the combine or anything. I didn't do anything. And I didn't do it at pro day. He said it doesn't mean anything. It's not going to change anything. We just need to have record that you did something. And I said, that sounds good. But what if I don't do this as fast as you think I should?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now you change your mind.
Right.
Because I'm a smaller guy already, and so speed is all I have. And so if you think I'm not as fast as that you saw on film, then we have a problem. And so, moving forward, we get to the draft, and I'm sitting around my family watching the draft, and I hear Commissioner Rozelle mention the trade, and I looked at my mom and I said, I'm about to get drafted.
Mm.
Wow.
And everybody was like, you're crazy.
Right.
I said, the Browns are about to draft me. And then they heard it.
Oh,
and I was
man.
like, and I said, I told you. And I knew that because I knew what Mike had told me, and I knew the Jets had the next pick.
Right.
And that's where I probably would have gone. And so at that very moment when I was drafted, I was ecstatic because that's a lifelong dream. All you think about is playing in the NFL when you're growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm finally gonna have that opportunity. In my mind, I never thought I would be a Cleveland Brown. I never thought I would. And Art called me, asked me about it, and about if I like it, and I was like, yeah. And then I said, I have one request. And he was like, what is that? I said, I need to wear number 21.
Mm.
That was my only request, and they said we could do that. So moving forward, I go there. Now it's mini camp, and it's May, and it's snowing.
Welcome to Cleveland.
And I'm thinking, oh, this ain't gonna work. I'm coming from Austin, Texas, playing in 70, 80-degree weather every week on artificial turf,
right?
Which makes you a lot faster. Now I'm coming to Cleveland, where it's going to be snowing on natural grass.
Yeah.
I don't know how this is going to work for me.
Right.
And at that time, you guys were sharing the stadium with the Indians too, right?
Right. And yeah, and then I end up holding out. I only played in one preseason game. I didn't even get to go to London with the team or anything, so I held out, played in one preseason game, got through all that, got into the real game, and from that day on, I fell in love with Cleveland.
Mm.
I just, and I think, and obviously it's because I was having success on the football field, and everybody, they liked me, and I liked the fans, and so that made it a lot easier, and so.
Absolutely.
And but because of the way it turned out and the way the fans treated me, I've only wanted to be associated with the Cleveland Browns. I don't even care that I play for 5 other teams.
One thing that you said I'm going to ask you a little bit more about the Browns, but before I do that, I've sensed kind of a constant theme throughout your life in terms of how you've operated, which I admire greatly. From your high school when you said, look, I'm not, you don't put me on varsity, I'm leaving, and then you left and you went to Virginia, to Texas when, you said the new coach came in and said, we need you at spring ball. And you're like, well, I'm running track. And he's like, well, you're not going to start. And you're like, well, I'll take my chances. To going to Cleveland and holding out, right? It seems like you just always seem like you had this like unwavering confidence and belief in yourself and always stood up for kind of your principle. Where did that come from? How did you just even have the confidence to kind of operate like that at all these different levels, even from a young age all the way to you being a pro?
It's pretty simple. I get to watch my dad,
Yeah.
And a lot of players don't have that. I mean, they get to watch their dads and other jobs and operate as a man and still be able to teach a son how to be a man. But I got to watch my dad and learn how to be a man and learn how the business of football and things like that went on. And so,
right.
so with that in mind, just knowing and just knowing from the time I was a kid that I was good, I stuck to that. I believe that I am this good regardless of what someone says. This is who I am gonna be. And my dad had always told me that when he was in high school, uh, someone told him he would never make it because it was too small.
Mm.
So he should not worry about being a football player. And he said that is what drove him to becoming who he was as a player. And he was telling me never let someone tell you that you're too small to do anything. And so with that in mind, I always kept that in the back of my mind because this is who I wanted to be from the time I was a kid. I practiced my autographs at a young age. I copied my dad.
Right.
Because I knew one day this is who I was going to be. And I think, like I said, it was just because I got to watch him on multiple levels that gave me that confidence to have confidence in myself. I mean, because you have confidence, but knowing that he told me to be like this, be a certain way, and what he was told, I know this really works if I believe in myself.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Now,
And,
now
and
get go
uh,
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, no. So one of the things I was gonna, first of all, that's awesome because I'm a father now. I have a 2-year-old son, and I firmly believe one of the most important things that you can give your children is confidence, right, to navigate this world because it's a cold world out here, and if they don't believe in themselves, other people won't. But I also want to get back to some of the Brown stuff, like when you actually got there, right, and some of your impressions when you got there. First of all, there are a lot of legends on that team. Browns legends and just NFL stars that when you first got to the Browns. And what was your impression of kind of some of your teammates at that time? And, what were your thoughts on the division as well that you were playing in? Obviously I think it's, Houston and the Steelers and obviously the Bengals. What was your impression of that when you got there?
Like going into it, I'd never thought really out of the Cleveland Browns. I mean, I had a friend who I played with the Texans, Stephen Braggs, who was at Cleveland 2 years ahead before me. And even when I got there, and so I watched him because he was playing, but I never really thought of that AFC Central at the time because I grew up a Charger fan,
Right.
And so I always thought about the AFC West. Chargers, Raiders, then the Seahawks, and the Chiefs, and so I really didn't take that into account going into it. But when I finally got to Cleveland and we're playing Pittsburgh, our first game of the season, and I'm listening to all the players, I'm listening to the coaches, Bud Carson, who coached both. I'm listening to all the fans talk about this rivalry and the Steelers and everything, and I'm like, what the hell? What's so big about this? It's pro football. It's not like college,
Right.
where you have these rivalries that have been going on, and so then we beat them 51-0. And I understand. I'm watching how people are acting and responding to this, and I soon learned that for the most part, if you're gonna win that division, you had to beat Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still to this day.
Yep.
Really and truly. I mean, Baltimore's had their time, their year, but when it's all said and done, you want to win that division, you got to beat Pittsburgh.
Right.
And I learned that quickly, but then after going through the division against the Bengals, Steelers, and the Oilers at the time, I sensed the rivalry. I sensed how it was more like a college atmosphere to me, and I really love that about being in that division because these are really bitter rivalries.
Yeah.
And I like it, and I love it because that's what makes the competition so much more better. And I enjoyed it, but and going back to all these stars and everything on the team, these guys have been to the AFC Championship and hadn't gotten over the hump. And I walked in and I was like, I'm me. And this is who I'm going to be, and they're going to like me or they're not going to like me. And then I have to tell the story because it's funny. Kevin Mack, Reggie Langhorne, two of my closest friends who I ever played with, and we still talk all the time now, said when I first got there that they didn't like me.
Wow.
Both of them, because I was, they thought that I was the first pick, and I was just too cool.
Right. Right.
But my thing, what I told them, and I will tell them to this day, I never thought I was too cool. I just expected to be here.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a big difference between that.
And there's a big difference. And once we started hanging out, once I started going to practice, once we hung out after practice, started playing game, they started to love me. I started to love them, and that's why we're friends to this day. And we're brothers to this day, because we were able to build those bonds in that locker room, on and off the field, and it's a special time.
Yeah, that was a very, very special time. Full disclosure, you were my favorite player on the team during those years. So.
Same.
Appreciate it.
And
did you have a 21 jersey?
Yes, I did. I used to act like you when I was running around the yard playing football. Obviously, wasn't as fast or as quick, but I thought I was.
So you don't still have it?
I don't still have it, but
okay.
But I reminisce very fondly of those days. And what was so special about you is you were really a revolutionary player that we had never seen before as fans, right? Like, you played running back, you lined up at receiver, you returned kicks, you returned punts. And it seemed like every time, even though you probably only got 10 to 15 total touches in a game, that you were explosive, and that any one of those times it could go for a touchdown. Did they have a plan? Did they know they were going to use you like that? Or was that something that happened through that first training camp?
I think, to be honest about it, I think my entire career, no one really knew how they were going to use me, and I think that's why in this day and age, if I were playing today the way they play football, I'd be holding out, because I touch the ball in so many different ways that I'd be like Christian McCaffrey, having a lot of rushes, a lot of receptions. But I think it's when I was in first training camp, like I said, I came late. And then we still had K-Mac, Tim Manoa, Keith Jones was there. Barry Redden ended up coming, and so I don't know if anyone really knew how they wanted to use me. They knew I played running back my entire life, and I had never been played receiver, but I could catch the ball. And so I think going in my first year, I think Mark Trustman did a good job. I mean, of course, I would have loved to have the ball more, but I came late, and then just trying to fit in the end. And so, but I was able to carry the ball a lot. I was able to catch the ball a lot, and then return kickoffs, not punts, because we had ice cubes still, so I didn't return punts, which is funny because that's what people know me as. Right now, the punt returner, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I thought that's how I was going to be used my entire career. Maybe 700 yards rushing and the same receiving, and then returning punts and kicks, and it just never transpired like that. Maybe only a couple times after, but it never really. I don't think I was used to my full potential. I think.
Do you think your game now, or your game, would be more suited for the NFL now, and how do you think you would fit in to kind of the NFL game today?
I think I would get busy today. I mean, everybody's basically playing running cute, right? Yeah,
right.
The three receivers, one tight end, one back, what have you, or 4 or 5 receivers, empty backfields, and all that. And so I could be playing all over the place. So I think I would thrive in that. And so I would love to play today, because back when I was first coming in the league, it was 3 guys in a cloud of dust. Everybody was still lining up in the eye and playing smash mouth football in between the tackles, and that's not my game. I mean, I could do it from time to time, but I couldn't do it 25 times
Right.
and expect to be successful at it. I mean, because when I think of myself as a football player, I think of myself, I'm a football player. Therefore, I can do multiple things. I think that's what makes me a football player. And so, as long as I had the ball 20 times, it doesn't have to be in between tackles 25 times. It could be 10 rushes, five receptions, five returns, and you have 20 touches. And I think if someone touches the ball 20 times, they should be able to do something with it. And that's why I think if I were able to play today, I could make it count with those 20 touches because the field is so spread out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I wanted to hone in. You said that you were known mostly for your punt returns. I wanted to ask you, there are only a handful of guys that belong in that conversation of the best punt returners ever. What is it about that specific skill set that's different? Like, what does it take to be a great punt returner? Because it's a very special skill that not a lot of guys throughout history have had at the level that you and a handful of other guys have.
Blocking.
That's an honest answer.
Right. No, but I think for me, I think the most important skill is the ability to make people miss, because when you're returning punt, someone is always going to be unblocked.
Yep.
Someone's always and it's usually the snapper. Someone's going to be unblocked, and so you have to be able to make the guy miss, and then be able to move around, maneuver to get to the wall or whatever return you have set up. And sometimes it doesn't get set up like you want or perfectly, and you have to be able to get through there and make people miss and score a touchdown. I think that's what the best returners do. They catch the ball, and you don't really have to take people out. Just get in their way a little bit, and I'll handle the rest. And that's Prime did it. You know, Dante Hall was one of my favorite because he was, like they said, a human joystick, right? And Devin Hester, of course, set the record, and Brian Mitchell is doing a great job. But when I say that, everybody who's done it can make people miss, regardless of whether they were blocking that. And I think that's the key to it.
Yeah, and you were a good kick returner too, a great kick returner too, which is also not to either you're good at one or the other. You were good at both. Great.
You know what's crazy about that is when I got in the NFL, I did not want to return punts, and I was happy that we had Q because they only had me returning kicks, and so then Belichick comes and he's the one who switched me to the punt returner, and he just came to me and said, "You say you want the ball more, you'll get the ball more. You're guaranteed to get the ball 4 or 5 times returning punts. And so you'll be our best guy doing it. So you should go back there and do that." And I said, and I bought into it. But then they slowly took me off the kickoff return. And I always said I didn't want to return punt because it just looked dangerous to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all I've done in all my life, you know, when you're in high school and you're a kid, the ball just rolls around. You pick it up and you run, and if you're faster than everybody, you outrun them. And that's what it is. Now we're talking about doing it in the pros. These guys get paid to come down there and take you out.
Right.
And so that's what I was thinking in my mind. But you know, you get to thinking about when the ball is punted to you, you could always fair catch it.
Mm-hmm.
You can always let it hit the ground, and your team still gets the ball. So there's no penalty behind that. So then if they kick it to you and they mess up, and it's a line drive or something, then you just take it to the house.
Right.
And so this could actually be fun. And you know, so once I started scoring touchdowns, I'm like, yeah, I like this. Forget that kickoff stuff. These guys stay in their lanes and they try to take you out. it's hard to block somebody who's running full speed down the field. So I don't trust the blocker on the kickoff return as much as I do those guys in punt return.
Right. Another question too. Webster Slaughter, he was another one of our favorite players, and when he left to Houston, that was kind of a big deal. Do you remember that time period, and what were your thoughts when that kind of happened? Because NFL trades weren't as big of a deal back then, or free agent signings and different things as they are now. I mean, they're so prevalent now, but what was that
especially
like back then?
in division to a rival.
Right.
Yeah, it was weird because Webb was one of my brothers, one of the guys I hung out with every day,
Yeah.
and even off the field. And so it was hard, especially going to Houston, right?
Yeah.
And so to see that, and then even Lang went and Bernie went and K-Mac's gone, it's like it happened in a big wave. And so it's just like something that you don't want to see because you always think, especially when you're younger, that this is going to be your team forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it's not going to be. And they tell you when you get to training camp, don't get too close to that guy. He might not be here next day. And so, you're so used to being with these guys as your brothers that you're in the locker room, you share good and bad times with, and then they're gone. So that just changes your perception of the job, the
Right.
job part of it, the professional part of it, not the organization, but the fact that when it's all said and done, this is a business, and you have to look out for yourself. You have to take care of your business on and off the field if you're going to be successful.
Absolutely. And one other question too, when the Browns, obviously this was later, but when the Browns actually decided, to move, what were your thoughts on that? How, I know, just tell us, what were your thoughts on that? Because, that was devastating for us as Browns fans when it happened.
Well, I had already been traded, but I still thought it was the craziest thing ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because and I can say it now, and it wouldn't have happened. But looking back, I wish I could have played my entire career in Cleveland. I really do. I wish nothing. I wish everything would have went right, whether we won Super Bowl or not. I just wish I could experience my whole career in Cleveland because I really enjoyed playing for the Cleveland Browns. And it took me going to other places to really see that, because when I was in Cleveland, I was asking to be traded, and that was basically because the way I was being used, and I felt like I would have more opportunities going other places. And so, with the team moving, going back to with the team moving, it really hurt me as if I was still there, because I truly felt for the fans. I really appreciate the love that the fans have for the players and that they have for me and that team. And so I knew what it meant to the city of Cleveland and Northeast Ohio. And so that was hard for me, because as if I were playing there.
Yeah.
Because I just love the fact that I can say that I was a Cleveland Brown, and for that period of time, that team was gone.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, because the culture when you were playing in Cleveland was one of expectations, right? Like, you guys were competitive pretty much every year, and the fans expected for the team to win consistently. It seems like since the team left and came back, obviously the struggles are well documented. The mistake by the lake, all those things started coming into normalcy. Like, what do you think needs to happen for this organization to get back to the culture that was there when you were playing?
Well, I think we're finally getting there. I know my complaints in the past have been too much turnover. Especially early. It's like different coach every 2 years, different quarterback every 2 years, a whole different offense, different style of defense, and we're doing this every every few years, and so you're not building a program. I think we're too worried about winning right now instead of trying to build a program that will sustain. And I think with John Dorsey and those guys when he got here, he was headed in that direction as far as building a program, and so it set it up where a lot of pieces were in, and I mean I don't know if I do know. I was about to tell a lie. I was about to say I don't know if Freddie was the right guy. I do know that he wasn't the right guy.
Right.
and so that was the one thing I didn't like, but bringing in the pieces, because during the time we were losing lots of games, we didn't really have that many good players like the Browns had in the past.
Yeah.
Right. And so now I think with the acquisitions that John Dorsey made and now that Andrew is making, there are a lot of very good players in place. And so now that they're putting the team together, and I think Coach Stefanski will lead us to victory, because and it's going to be so sweet that they're going to start winning again in the old school uniforms.
I love it. I was going to ask you about that too, about the uniforms. They just revealed, the new uniforms. Are those the ones that you like? Do you have a specific combination that you like more than other ones?
Well, I had been waiting for the uniforms to be unveiled, and when they came out and they were like, I was excited. I was like, yeah, I felt like, oh, I would look good in that. That was the first thing that came to mind. I would look good in that because it looks almost just like what I wore. But my favorite combination is the white, all white.
Yeah.
It's the white on white. And I mean, and I think it has to do with me being at Texas, wearing the tidy whities, the iced out, and so that's what I'm used to. So that's what I like, because you look so much faster in it.
It's clean. Yeah, it's super clean. And one other question on the current Browns is Baker Mayfield. When you look at him and his skill set, do you look? Obviously, he has a certain level of talent that no one can deny. But do you think that he's a transcendent type of talent, like the guy that can win you win the Super Bowl because of him, or do you just think that he's a good piece that obviously with other good pieces around him can be a contributing factor to winning?
I actually think he's better than good, and we have a lot of players who can make him look a lot better if everyone does their job. I think his first year when he came in and took over for Tyrod and won some games, I think that brought on a lot of expectations from not only the team but the fans. But when you think about it, during that time, they won a lot of meaningless games. In fact, every one of those games was meaningless. They beat one team that made it to the playoffs that year, and that was Baltimore before Lamar, right?
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And so everybody had all these expectations, and now we go to last year, which was the second season, and it doesn't turn out like everyone expected. And I think just going back and looking at it, it was putting too much pressure on Baker, and he's the leader of the team and he's the quarterback. And when I looked at how they were running offense, I thought about it. I thought it looked like Freddie was just trying to do Baker solid and make him the star, right? Mm. Whereas it's his team, he's the quarterback. He's always going to be the star.
Right.
But the real star is number 24, Nick Chubb.
Mm. Yep. Say it again.
and you can say I'm biased because I play running back also, but that is who is the real star. And he could have carried that team to more victories if would have given him the ball and pounded and then made the plays with the receivers that we have in Jarvis and Odell and all those guys.
And they had Kareem Hunt as the backup too, so ground and pound really made sense, right? So.
Right, and Kareem, and Kareem is a very versatile player. So you could put both of the Nick and Kareem on the field at the same time, and you never know what's going to happen. It's just a matter of knowing how to manage all that talent, all these egos, and keep everybody happy, but doing it in the structure of winning for the team.
Man, you're getting me excited, man. I first of all, I hope there's a season. And I guess my question to you next is, what do you feel about if there is no season, or if we had to have a season with no fans? Obviously, that's much better than no season. What are your thoughts on kind of what that would mean for football?
Man, there better be a season.
Yeah.
I honestly don't believe there is any way that the NFL won't have a season. I mean, I would be 100. I would believe 100% that the NFL will have a season, because the NFL can survive without fans in the seats. They still have a big TV contract, and they still have local TV markets where everybody can still see those games, and so they'll still get the following that they need. So I think I think it would still work. We don't want that to happen. We want to be in the stands, right? Or in a suite, or wherever we have to be to enjoy it. But we want to see it because that's what it's all about, especially when you have high expectations. You have all these players, and this could be a very good year for the Browns, and it would be even more painful for Browns fans if this was one of their best years in many years, and you couldn't be in the seats to see it, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I had one more question about the current team for you, and that goes to Odell Beckham, right? He's obviously a transcendent talent. Anyone who's seen the guy play knows that he has a superhuman skill set, but it seems like that full potential hasn't been unlocked consistently anywhere he's been, right? Whether it's New York, injuries have played a role. What do you think the organization kind of needs to do to unlock the full potential of this beast that we have?
I think they need to do pretty much what they did with him in New York. I mean, when we talk about last year's team, and everybody says that it wasn't an Odell-like season, but he still had 1,000 yards in a season where everybody thought he didn't do anything, right? He still had 1,000 yards, and there's been receivers who would kill to have 1,000 yards in a season.
Right.
But my issue with last season is all the routes that they ran, where everything seemed to be so deep. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, if you ask anybody, any Cleveland Browns, and they would say the weakest part of our team was offensive line.
Yep.
That last year. That's what everyone would say. So if that's the case, why are you putting all the pressure on them to hold guys for 5 seconds so these guys can get down the field on all these deep routes? Let these superstars be superstars. Throw them the ball 5-10 yards and let them turn it into 60.
Right.
Yep.
And that's what Odell had done when he was having his success, catching slants, taking it 60 yards.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And that's what we want to continue to see.
Couple more questions before we get you out of here. You know, first of all, talking this football, my juices are flowing. I'm sure if you've been around football enough, I'm sure your juices are flowing just talking about this, right? Thinking of what it could be, especially if you're a Browns fan, seeing all the talent that's there and seeing what it could be. But one of the things that we want to make sure we get from you before you go too is kind of advice, right? So, you know, for the next generation, you know, this navigating the professional ranks of football is different than it was before. One of the things that you just alluded to a few minutes ago was kind of understanding that this is a business. As much as you may love someone or your coach or your teammate, this is a business. So I have two questions that are kind of packed in one. One is, you know, knowing what you know now, what, if anything, would you have done differently? And then the second thing is, what advice would you kind of give to the young guys that are coming into the league now that are actually, you know, some are about to get drafted this week?
I think knowing what I know now, I think the only thing I would have maybe done differently, which I pretty much already said, was somehow figured out a way to make it work in Cleveland. You know, I mean, and that's kind of hard to say because the team ended up moving anyway.
Right.
But I think I wouldn't have been so adamant about getting out of Cleveland. I would have been
Right.
like, I can stay here. We can work this out as long as we're winning 11 games, going to the playoffs, and winning games. I'm considered one of the stars here on this team, so it will work out. You know, it works. So that would be one thing that I would probably change because, like I said, I want to play in Cleveland. I wish I would have played in Cleveland my entire life. And so, moving forward, I would say that's one thing that young players have to take into consideration. I mean, you know, when you're looking at it and moving from team to team, of course you're getting lots of money, but sometimes you want to win. I mean, if you're the way they get paid right now, if you get $50 million from a team that you're with, and another team offers you $52 million, but they're gonna lose, what's the point?
Right.
You know. And so I think a lot of guys have to think about what's really best, not at that very moment, but long term. Because we all want to be happy, we all want to be successful, we all want to get paid as much as we can. But in everything you do, I think you want to feel good about doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you want to be able to do it to the best of your ability. And so, you know, I've asked kids that I've coached when I coached football years ago, if you had an opportunity to make, just throwing numbers out there, $1 million to play football, but nobody knows you, would you take that over 500,000 to play, and everybody knows you? And what does everyone say? They're going to take the $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Me, I say I want the 500 because I want to know that I left an imprint on this game. I want people to know me because I did something. I'm not worried about. I'll take care of that other part later. I want to feel like I contributed to the success of this league.
Speaking of that, actually, you know, what do you think your legacy actually is? And I guess the other question is, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, when they talk about Eric Metcalf, what is it that you hope people would say?
He can do it all.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want people to be able to say. I want people to look at film. I want them, well, they will see that lined up everywhere. I mean, running back, receiver, kickoff return, punt returner, lined up the quarterback against the Bengals and threw a pass. And Mike Tomczak dropped it and even threw touchdown pass out of the backfield. So I want people to be able to say that I could do it all. But I think if I had it my way, I would like people to take to really look at what I did. I mean, and I don't really talk about it much, but 17,000 yards is a lot of yards, especially a long, 10 years ago. That's a lot of yards, and to get 17,000 yards and not really even have the ball that much, I think is a lot. And so when I think about how people think about me, I think most people think, oh, he was a punt returner, you know.
Yeah.
But when I think of myself, I think I'm a football player.
Right.
I play many different positions and could do many different positions well. And so I think that's what makes me a football player, and that's what I wish people really saw me for.
I honestly don't think that we've seen a player quite like you even today. In today's game, there are guys that catch the ball, but like you said, you actually lined up at receiver and ran real routes. You weren't just catching little dink and dunk screen passes and turning it into something. Do you think that there are players? I mean, we were talking about this earlier, and the closest we thought was maybe Le'Veon Bell. But are there any players in today's game that you think have the same skill set or similar skill set as you do?
I think Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
I mean, Christian McCaffrey has done it, but I don't know how he would do it if he tried to really line up at receiver. You know, I mean, he catches a lot of balls, but if you really tried to line up at receiver, would people still fear him the same way? I don't know. He's a very good football player. He can do it all, but that goes back to my point. That's why I like people to look at me that way, because when I think of myself, I could do all those things, you know, and I don't think that people really think of me that in that way, and in which I think they should.
Yeah.
And if they really thought of me that way, I think I would have a yellow jacket. But they don't. But they don't.
Does that hurt? Does that hurt? I mean, does that piss you off? Like, when you, in your honest moments, like, does that piss you off? Like, that you don't have the yellow jacket yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it does more so because when you talk about me and whether they going to the Hall of Fame or whatever, everybody thinks punt returner, right? But when you put me on the Hall of Fame list, I'm listed as a running back.
Yeah.
And so it's like torn. You call me a punt returner and you don't let me in because they don't let special teams players in, but then you line me up you put me on the list as a running back, which we know I didn't rush for 1,000 yards.
Right.
But not many people have 17,000 yards.
Right.
Yep.
And so, you know, it does upset me. I mean, because once you get to a certain level, now you want to be at the highest level. And there's only maybe 300 people in the Hall of Fame, and to be in that group would be very special. But not being in that group doesn't take away from everything that I accomplished. Because I feel like
if there's any consolation, you're definitely a Hall of Famer to us. Trust me, a lot of other people. So I mean, you know, at least you have that. Trust me, some people don't even have that. So
I appreciate.
Yeah, sometimes the way that they evaluate these things are too restrictive, and I think if they, like you said, if they evaluated your career as a whole, there's been no player like you. I honestly believe that. I have watched football for about 30 years. I haven't seen one like you since, especially at the NFL level. So, you know, hopefully, you know, they change their minds and you get in here soon.
Yeah.
Hopefully one day. But once again, if not, I appreciate the fact that you guys feel that way, and I appreciate the time that I had as a player.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to get you out of here on this. We have, you know, we're going to switch gears completely. We have two kind of off the, you know, fun questions that we like to do with all of our guests before we go, just to switch it up. So the first question is, who are your top 5 musicians of all time? So people who influence you personally. It could be through your childhood, it could be now, it could be any combination. Obviously it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best, you know, but just personal list, top 5 musicians.
Okay. So I'm gonna do it like this. I can't say they're my top 5 or my favorite, but if you put me in a room and said these are the only 5 people you can listen to for the rest of your life.
Isn't that what we're like right now, like in quarantine?
Teddy Riley's dropping off some people's lists right now, unfortunately.
So that's what we're gonna do. I'm going with Michael Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going with Notorious B.I.G.
Yes.
This might be a shocker, but I absolutely love her, Erica Badu.
No, that's not a shocker at all. Yeah, Erica.
I get now because you got so many people.
I know, right?
You had so many people. I need somebody who's gonna be some entertainment. So I need Chris Brown to come in and dance for us. Also, him and Mike having battles.
Right. He's
that would be amazing
from a dancing perspective. Sure.
Right. And then because from the time she was Penny on Good Times, I had a crush on Janet Jackson.
I love it. That's a good list.
You got 2 Jacksons on there.
Yeah.
I got 2 Jacksons. Yeah.
And
That's my 5.
and now this one's going to be in your wheelhouse probably. Your top 5 athletes of all time.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
oh, oh, God, that's tough.
Don't be afraid to put yourself on there too.
Oh, you there?
No, I wouldn't do that. But Carl Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan. See, man, Carl Lewis, Michael Jordan. See, do I put who I think is the greatest football player of all time?
You gotta tell us who that is, regardless, because now we're curious.
See. I'm like torn. I have 1A and 1B, and so 1A and 1B football players for me are Jim, of course, because he's one of the top athletes in the world, so you got to put him in there. But my 1B is Prime,
Mm.
and that's because he could do it all. Yeah, I'm
Yep.
into people who can do a lot of things
Right.
and make you a real football player. So my list right now, I have Carl Lewis, Michael Jordan, Jim Brown, because he's the greatest, Muhammad Ali,
Yep.
Serena.
Yeah.
You're coming with it with these lists.
Yeah. This is a fire list. One other question that you just made me think of before very last question, and we'll get you out of here, is you mentioned Michael Jordan, obviously, and obviously, his documentary, The Last Dance, just came out, debuted season 1 and 2, and we've been recapping it too. What are your thoughts on just kind of that Bulls era and kind of the documentary itself?
I'm a Knicks fan because I love Patrick Ewing when he was at Georgetown, and so I'm a Knicks fan. So I kind of hated Michael in the respect of we couldn't get past him,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
but there's no denying that he's the greatest basketball player in history. And I love being able to watch this because the fire in him is what made him who he is. That's why they have 6 championships, because the way he talked to his players and what he expected of his teammates and the front office as well. And I think I like when I think it was Roy Williams who said he had some people have a switch and he never turned it off, regardless of who he was playing against.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when you've been cut from teams, when you've been told that you can't do something. He worked to become the greatest basketball player of all time because people told him he couldn't do it. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's funny. It seems like there's a lot of similarities in terms of mentality between you and him. Obviously, he's one of our favorite basketball players, both B and I. And you're one of our favorite football players. It's just amazing. It's like still surreal that we're talking on the phone with you. But thank you so much for joining us on the Pilot Boys podcast. This was amazing interview. And I know you could be doing a lot of other things. So we really, really appreciate you taking out the time.
Well, no problem. But there aren't many things I could be doing right now.
We should be feeling too full of ourselves.
No, I'm just kidding. I could be cleaning the house, right? No.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you so much, though.
You're definitely good at dodging people at the grocery store. That's for sure.
You guys, thanks very much. I appreciate your support for sure.
All right, take care, man. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Be safe.
Stay safe.
Love the Pilot Boys podcast? Support us on Patreon. Supporters can pledge as little as $1, and we have some cool perks on there. Check out www.patreon.com/Pilot Boys podcast. Show us some love today.
You're listening to the Pilot Boys podcast. Wow, V. I mean, what the fuck, man? Like, we just had Eric Metcalf as one of our guests on the Pilot Boys podcast. This is a childhood hero. This is not a joke when we say that. We started this podcast less than 6 months ago. And we have one of our childhood heroes on the podcast. I mean, like what? Like I'm still kind of like I don't know. What do you feel, man? Like what are your thoughts on that? Like that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a kid, first of all, Eric Metcalf, as a Browns fan growing up in those years, he was all of our favorite player, right?
Hmm.
He was just more exciting than everyone else,
Right, right.
and it was just unbelievable to watch him play the game of football. It was like every second
Yeah,
you were waiting for him to score a touchdown. But also, it's
right,
like when I was a kid, I was like, damn, I wish I could get Eric Metcalf's autograph. I wish I could
right,
talk to him for 5 minutes to get an hour and 15 minutes to kind of ask him all the questions that I wanted to ask him when I was a kid. Um, Words,
it's unreal.
it's very surreal. It's very surreal.
Yeah. And so, the thing that kind of first of all, there's so many things that struck me about it, about just kind of our conversation with him. And I even told him one of them, which was just his self assuredness throughout every period of time in his life. Starting all the way to his freshman year in high school, and probably even before
Yeah.
that, where he was just like, "Look, I know what I want. I know what my worth and what my value is, and I'm going after it." And some people might look at that and say, this is just an entitled kid who has the son of an NFL dad, is just a brat." But I don't look at it that way. I look at it as someone who said, "Listen, I'm a self-assured. I understand how these systems work, and I understand how you guys, use people up and spit people out. And I'm not going to let you guys do that to me. I'm going to actually become what it is that I want to become, and I'll deal with the consequences if you guys don't want to let me do that."
To achieve like success and be above average in anything in life, the this common thread is an unwavering belief in yourself. We know a lot of
Hmm.
successful people, and the people who are most successful in our network, it seems they all have that, right? It's like there might be some insecurity that drives them to be better, but they at their core believe in themselves. And I think that that's the takeaway from Eric Metcalf is, yeah, you may not put me in the Hall of Fame, but I know what I did and what I accomplished, and that I deserve to be there.
Yeah.
And I think that that's all we can do, is because none of us will ever necessarily get the respect. You see it even with Michael Jordan now. It's like everyone's looking to find who the guy that's going to be better than him. It's like, let's just appreciate him and then also appreciate the greatness of the others as well, right?
And that's why I think it's also important, and to tell people how they feel, how you feel. Like it's not, we're not over here fanboying like, "Oh my God, you're the greatest ever," like just randomly. Like, no, we actually believe the things that we're saying. We do believe he's a Hall of Fame player. We do, you know, wanted to tell him about all the moments that he created for us when we were kids. I think it's, we get into a culture a little bit sometimes where people are afraid to tell people stuff, and they don't want to look like they're dick riding or whatever it is. But like, nah, give people their flowers while they're here, and let people know that they're appreciated. Because sometimes the way that they feel like they want to be appreciated, for example, the standard that the gold jacket or yellow jacket, he may not ever get it, but to many, many millions of people, or hundreds of thousands of people at least across the country, he is a Hall of Fame guy.
And
So,
I think the other takeaway from this is I feel like we live in a culture today. You know how much I love history, that we don't fully appreciate the history. This is a guy that played in the late 80s and 90s, but he was still a superstar, right? And it's
mhm.
like knowing and understanding his game and what made him special is still valuable, even though he played almost 30 years ago, right?
And he mentioned that Deion Sanders was kind of his 1A in terms of who he thought was kind of the go to football. And it wasn't too long ago, maybe a week or two ago, where Deion Sanders was kind of gushing about Eric Metcalf as well, in terms of how talented of a player he was. And so he definitely gets that respect as well, even from the greats. And so again, I'm still a little speechless kind of about the fact that he was on the podcast. But I think more important than even that was just the dimes that he dropped, the advice that he gave to the young guys, kind of just the example that he's become of kind of how to navigate through this business, and the honesty that he had of what he would do differently and so on and so forth. I think it was just great.
That was my favorite part of the interview. Like when he actually illustrated, that money isn't everything all the time. Yes, we
Hmm.
all want to make a lot of money, but he said his biggest regret was leaving the Browns. And he appreciated that in hindsight, right? He didn't appreciate that at the time. But, you know, those are things that we all should think about. We see it all the time. It's like players who play on great teams leaving to take that big payday. And although they may have all the money in the world, they're not quite as happy. And losing is miserable when you're a competitor, right? So
100%.
I just really liked his insight onto that, into that aspect of things.
Yeah, that was great, man. And so, you know, we obviously, hopefully we'll, you know, keep talking to him and, you know, and keep developing a relationship there and maybe have him on again. And, you know, there's still other things that we probably want to talk to him about that we didn't get a chance to talk to him about. But for now, that was absolutely amazing.
And it was great for Browns fans. It gives us all something to be excited about because he seems very optimistic about where we're headed.
Amen. You listen to the Pilot Boys podcast. Also want to give a major shout out to Premier Podcast for helping us set up our home studio during this quarantine period. You guys got to check them out, man. Go to their website, premierpodcast.com. They're helping out during this shutdown with free 30-minute coaching sessions to help anyone get their podcast started. And also follow them on social media at Premier Podcast. That's all we have for today's show. Big thanks to our guest, Eric Metcalf. Thanks to everybody for listening. Don't forget, sharing is caring. Subscribe to the Pilot Boys podcast on Apple, Spotify, Patreon, and YouTube. And please follow us on social media at Pilot Boys Pod on Twitter and at Pilot Boys Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. And follow the hosts on Twitter. I am at Mechadon Music, and V is at The Swan. And don't forget to grab some Pilot Boys wristbands at shop.pilotboys.com.
Always remember, be you. You is fly.
Pilot Boys out!
Pilot boys, we get on up.